Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed the holidays. We threw a little get-together down in my section of hell. Had a blast. Anyways, today's story is called Hell for the Company, written by Cal Ness. So, you know the drill. Sit back, grip your seats, and enjoy. It was a genius move in hindsight. There weren't any bells and whistles. The Antichrist came to Earth in the form of a B-list Christian country music singer named Billy Beal. He had dark black hair, curly and chin length. He was built like an ox, tall 6.5 feet, and well over 250 pounds. The kind of guy you wanted on your side in a barroom ball. When I entered his inner circle months later, Billy told me his stage name was a combination of Belial and Basil Bub. What does it mean? He smiled this trademark deceiver smile. Then in his plucky country twang answered, "The vile lord of dung." The scariest part of everything was how big of a joke all of it was to him. His mission was to create hell on earth and bring a population of 7.5 billion people under his dominion. He laughed about it often. His indifference was the part that scared me the most. I first met Billy in August of 2019. At the time, I worked with my mentor in the Christian music industry, a guy named Corey Sims. Corey took me under his wing when I expressed interest in going on the road with rock stars. I grew up a Christian. Not a good one, but a Christian nonetheless. I remember the basic lessons, but nothing too specific. Do good unto others, choose light over darkness. Follow Jesus and be compassionate. I had long since ditched the dogma part, and I didn't believe Jesus was the literal Son of God. Nor that accepting him as my Lord and Savior booked me a one-way ticket to a place called heaven. But the memories of everything I was told growing up stuck around. The lessons you learn as a kid make an imprint on your soul. No matter how hard I ran from my past, I would always believe some of the stuff, whether I wanted to or not. I had suspected Billy had some bad habits for a while. So did Corey, but not that he was the Antichrist. That came later. I was an equipment guy. My job was setting up amps, making sure the guitars were properly strung, and emptying the spit cups before they overflowed. I realized something was truly wrong in the middle of a show. I was standing next to Corey backstage. Billy had been on stage singing a cover of In the Secret by a past their prime band called Mercy Me. Billy changed the lyrics. No one but Corey and me noticed. The crowd was too busy waving their hands around in praise, as were the rest of the roadies and equipment managers. Billy's twang cut through the noise, crystal clear. I wanna know you. I wanna hear your voice. I wanna know you more. There was a crescendo of drums and squealing Fender Telecasters, but I could still hear Billy's words underneath the noise. I wanna touch you in a special place. I wanna know you more. Corey and I looked at each other dumbfounded, both wondering if we'd misheard. After the concert ended and everyone was backstage, Corey confronted Billy. Billy, awkward question. Did you change the lyrics of that last song on us? Yes, sir, said Billy. A charming snake oil smile was plastered on his face. You heard me clear as rain. Billy led us back to a private room at the venue. He had a young girl under each arm. When he took the girls, Billy always said they were worshiping. But if I'm being honest with myself, I think I knew the truth all along. Billy, said Corey, following him into the room. Time to cut the shit and get honest. Once we got past the door frame, Billy looked at it, and the door swung shut. Silence descended except for the excited giggles of the girls. Billy's drummer and lead guitarist were there too. Cut the shit? Asked Billy, He unsheathed the Bowie knife he always kept on his hip. Get honest. He opened a drawer and took out a plastic package of white powder. Corey, you tell me to cut the shit again, and I'm liable to get angry. Billy sliced open the package with the tip of the Bowie knife, scooped a heaping pile of powder with the tip, and snorted it straight off the blade, kicking his head back and howling like a wolf at a full moon. I looked over at the two girls. Their eyes were blank, hypnotized or hopped up on drugs Billy had given them. Billy's drummer and guitarist were smiling. Corey's face was as white as the powder Billy snorted. Damn, that's good, yelled Billy. He spun the knife around, the handle thudding into his calloused grip. Without warning, his band members jumped up, grabbed Corey and restrained him. As Billy walked towards Corey, he looked over at me. Ever managed a tour, kid? No, sir. Want to someday? Course. Well, that's good enough for me. Billy shot me a wink. See you in hell, Corey. Before I could blink, Billy stabbed the massive tip of the knife between Corey's eyes. As the front of Corey's skull split in two and his life faded, he had a final look of realization. Billy, let's talk through. Blood rushed out under his eyelids and through the cleaved canyon in his skull. He slumped to the floor, sputtered, and died. The two girls on the couch started giggling even louder. Billy wicked the knife and rubbed off the rest of the blood on Corey's plaid shirt. And the tour rolls on, he said. Got me a new manager. He turned back to the girls, looking at them with a predatory smile. Your first job is to clean this shit up, kid, he said. Me and the girls need to get back to worshipping. My life had changed forever. My mentor was murdered, and Billy promoted me to tour manager. Of course, Billy lied to everyone, saying Corey quit. I kept my mouth shut. Everywhere I went, Billy's goons were watching. A week later, I read in the newspaper that the cops had found Corey's body in an alley. They nailed a couple of gang members for the crime. The next 2 months, September and October, were spent learning the ropes of how to manage the tour. I saw and learned a lot. On the same day I tried my hand at negotiating a last-minute spot for Billy, I saw his S&M torture chamber behind a hidden wall at the back of his tour bus. He and his bandmates had been tending to a few roadies before they closed the door on me. When the tour bus broke down one day, I learned how to argue with mechanics about the costs, while Billy went into the back of their shop and brokered a deal for a dozen guns with the serial numbers filed off. I got an insider's look at the musician's creative process, too. Billy loved sitting naked in his mansion between gigs, his beloved Ruger Mini 14 laying across his desk as he wrote lyrics. One weekend in late October, I was summoned. It felt like a cold blast of air hit me when I got the news. Every fiber of my being froze up. All I could see was Corey's dead body, his lifeless eyes staring up at nothing. Howdy, kid, said Billy, looking up when I walked in. Get you a beer. He reached into the drawer. I expected a gun to come out. The blast, followed by a muzzle flash, would be the last thing I saw. But Billy just grabbed a glass and pushed it across his desk to me. I grabbed a Coors from his mini fridge, poured it in, and started drinking. Billy was buck naked. His gator skin cowboy boots kicked up. His massive dick slumped over his leg like a sleeping anaconda. Tell me what you think of this new song. He pushed a sheet of paper across the desk. The song was titled Dudes and Deuteronomy. I scanned the lyrics, nothing too problematic until the chorus. Men fight each other. Oh yeah. Bitches try to save them. Yes siree. Put out your rump, little lass. And let me grab that sweet ol' ass. Men fight each other. And women intervene. What the hell was I supposed to say? Great song, Billy. I think it's going to be a hit with the Christian music industry. Every interaction with Billy felt like a balancing act. He was a powder keg. One false move and you caught a Bowie knife between the eyes. The right move. Billy could make all your dreams come true, but whether or not that was a good thing remained to be seen. "Don't judge," Billy said, glaring at me. "It's a work in progress, motherfucker." I hadn't realized Billy was pointing the Mini 14 at me, aiming the sight squarely between my eyes. I felt like a deer the second it sees the hunter and realizes the end's coming. "I like it." Billy lowered the gun, broke up laughing and smiled that charming deceiver smile. "I'm fucking around. Lighten up." Crisis averted. My heart started beating again. "It's a total piece of shit," said Billy. "Took me 5 minutes to write. You wouldn't believe how easy it is to write Christian songs. Same few cowboy chords, a bunch of lyrics about Jesus being great. I pull these ditties straight out of my ass." He grabbed the sheet and pulled it back. "Don't you accuse me of being sexist," he said. "That song right there is about female empowerment. Your species' better half stepping in when the boys get out of pocket." He opened the top drawer of his desk and took out 2 bundles of powder wrapped in plastic wrap, setting them on his desk. "What's your stance on getting high?" Billy asked. "You ain't one of those little shits who whips himself for wanting to have a good time, are you?" "I drink. I smoke weed occasionally." "You manage a Christian country music singer, and you smoke weed?" I nodded, still walking the tightrope, but beginning to realize that I'd earned Billy's trust. I couldn't decide what was worse, being on Billy's bad side or being on his good side. "Okie doke. What's your take on speedballs then?" "I don't know what that is." "Heroin and coke. Get your heart a-thrumming and your brain a-numbing." He grabbed his Bowie knife. I remembered Corey's last moment. Blank eyes, life gone, blood spraying out beneath the lids like a busted spigot. But Billy just scooped a bit of each of the powder onto the tip of the knife, then formed a thick line along the edge of the blade. He held it up to my face. "Let her rip, good buddy." "I don't know." Billy started at me over the blade of the knife, the same one he'd used to murder my mentor. "Sure you do." I leaned forward. The knife was an inch from my naked eyeball. "Plug one of your nostrils, you fucking rube." I did as I was told. "Mind the blade." Billy let it waggle in his grip. "It's awful sharp." As quick as I could, I snorted the line. The sharp edge of the knife dragged across my upper lip, so close that a bit of my wannabe mustache floated down onto Billy's desk. I was hit with an instant blast of euphoria. In a split second, my fear lifted. It was the best feeling I'd ever felt. High and low at the same time, like my body was splitting in half. The stuff in the space between was pure nectar. I was ascending to heaven and sinking to hell, realizing the strange magic of both places all at once. "Now, I didn't tell you this," said Billy, "but that beer you're drinking has a little extra something." He smiled. I saw the devil. Billy's mask was lifting. "You've got a nice little nightcap running through you. Don't be afraid. Let it wash over you. The speedball's doing its trick. So's the acid I dropped into your glass." Billy stood up. His dick swung between his legs like a pendulum, seeming to reach the floor like a third appendage. I recoiled at the sight of it, half expecting it to come to life, grab me by the throat and rip it out. Billy helped me sit down on a comfy chair, his calloused fingers like claws. He made his way to a door at the back of his office and opened it. 3 gorgeous women and 2 beautiful men walked in. A group of Billy's band members came in too, and they made their way over to his desk. Cloven hooves clickety-clacked on the marble floor. Billy grew in stature. Was it the drugs? I couldn't tell. But he was 8 feet tall, half man and half goat. His beard got longer, so long it almost swept the floor. Billy motioned to the 5 majestic creatures, their sex pouring out in stimulating waves. "Y'all take care of the kid now," Billy said. "He's on the inside of the circle. It's a place of sanctity and bountiful love. We have fun around these parts, don't we?" The 5 beautiful creatures nodded in unison. Then their clothes dropped away, revealing the perfect naked bodies beneath. The next 12 hours were the most surreal I'd ever experienced. My body was altered by the hands of 5 people who knew what they were doing. Every lesson I'd learned as a young Christian, be good, care for others, bring happiness into the world, was smashed. But this is what it felt like to be one of the people who rule the world. The power was terrifying. I felt extreme pleasure and extreme pain. I climaxed and plummeted. I healed and I bled. I even got a pair of tattoos. While 3 beautiful creatures were tending to my 4th orgasm, the other 2 held me down. A tattoo artist wearing a leather mask with a zipper on his mouth went about his work on each of my pectoral muscles. On my left, he created a jagged pentagram. In my bizarre mental state, I thought it was on fire. On my right pec, he drew a picture of a ram's head with 2 words beneath it: Billy's goat. Before I passed out, I heard what Billy and his bandmates were talking about. How to make sure they got the main stage at Creation Fest 2020. I woke up the next morning in a cloud-like canopied bed next to the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. She had blonde, curly hair, tan, freckled skin, and dimples in her cheeks. Her breasts were small, and she had a butt so big it deserved its own orbit. She was my dream girl. The perfect summation of beauty that I'd imagined my entire life, but had never seen in the flesh. "I heard Billy let you in on some secrets last night," she said. She helped me sit up, then put a tray on my lap. It was a gourmet breakfast. Biscuits and gravy, belly ham, fluffy scrambled eggs, and fresh squeezed orange juice. "My name's Lilith," she said. "You can call me Lily." Nice to meet you, Lily." She smiled and fed me a forkful of biscuits and gravy. I noticed her nails then. They were long and well manicured, painted robin eggs blue with a delicate yellow flower drawn onto each. "He trusts you, you know," Lily said. "Billy, I mean." Hungrier than I'd ever been, I nodded, scarfing down the breakfast. It was heavenly. "When you get inside the circle," she continued, "you stay inside the circle." She reached over to my left pec and undid the bandage. I looked down to see the bloody, swollen pentagram inked onto it. The previous night I'd imagined it being on fire, but now it was just jet black stenciled onto raw skin underneath. "Stay inside the circle," she said, tracing the wound with love and looking at me with big brown eyes. Gently, she put the bandage back on. "You also have the mark of the beast." I stopped eating for a second, my cheeks stuffed. I'd forgotten the lessons I'd been taught growing up. Eating the apple like God told the first man and the woman not to. Lily loosened the bandage on my right pec to reveal the other tattoo. A ram's head with 2 words beneath: Billy's goat. My stomach sank. I was one of Billy's acolytes now. "Don't be scared," Lily said, smiling. "I'll guide you on the path. I'm to be your wife, after all." She smiled and kissed my cheek, tingling electricity transferring from her cotton candy lips and onto my skin. "One of your wives, anyway," she said. "It all depends on what you want. You're a general now. You'll have a harem, just like all of Billy's generals do." You can have husbands if you swing that way. I can be whatever you want me to be. And I can get you whatever you want. I nodded, then I swallowed and spoke. You said I'm a general. What does that mean exactly? For the coming war, honey. Lily smiled sweetly. I noticed then that she was doing something with her robin's eggs nails. A spider. She was playing with a spider. There was a red hourglass on its belly, a black widow. Oh, fuck me. You trust Lily, okay? She said, caressing my cheek with the same fingers as the black widow was twining its way through. I'm gonna take care of you. October turned into November, then December came just as suddenly. The days continued ticking down until Creation Fest 2020, which was only 7 months away. Billy's generals, I came to find, lived a life of luxury. Maybe luxury isn't the right word. I was fucking terrified and in a state of drug-induced exaltation all at once, morally ripped in half. Billy insisted we do drugs together almost every night in the war room, another word for his S&M torture chamber in the back of his tour bus. I looked on aghast, as flesh was flayed and innocence was stolen away, all through a foggy drug-induced delirium. Lily and I were married on Christmas Day. Billy wed us himself. We stood beneath a massive pentagram burning in the winter sky, brimstone raining down from above. One of Billy's dark priests served a flesh Eucharist skinned from the corpse of a war room victim. Another priest served goblets of blood to wash it down. That night, the night of Lily's and my consummation, I was cornered by a harem of men and women and beasts. I looked up overhead at the ceiling between orgasms. An inverted crucifix was bolted on. Jesus wept. I thought of my parents who taught me to be good, kind, and generous, and I was terrified. What had I become? Why had it come to this? A few nights later, standing alone on the heated floor in Billy's master bathroom and trembling in fear, I looked in the mirror. I had tar-black circles under my eyes. I had lost weight, my shoulder bones poked through the shirt I was wearing like broken kindling. The person staring back at me wasn't me at all. I was a dead man walking. What had I become? And why had it come to this? On December 29th, 4 days after my unholy wedding, I realized the time was coming when I'd have to make a decision to stay with Billy or try and stop him. Billy was on stage at a show. The audience was a mass of arms waving in unison. People praising a master they didn't understand. Dudes in Deuteronomy had become a hit, and Billy spread the defiled message to anyone who would listen. He was drawing a bigger crowd those days. Lambs coming to the slaughter. After the encore, Billy came off stage to an uproarious cheer. I was standing with Lily, who was always by my side. Her robin's eggs blue fingers had danced on my neck, sending shivers down my spine. Billy motioned back in the direction of the crowd, who were cheering for another encore. Looking at me, he asked, "Do you hear their bleating?" Then he smiled his deceiver smile and kissed me on the forehead. "Keep booking the venues," he said, "and I'll make you their shepherd." Every waking second that I wasn't being given drugs, watching people be tortured or getting fucked into oblivion, I spent my time trying to discern Billy's plan. An idea came to me one morning. Despite the hypnotic state of my life, I still found ways to tether myself to the real world. I read the news religiously, willing a story to appear that Billy had been found out somehow. But nothing showed up. Nothing except the news that around the world, coronavirus was spreading. It was part of Billy's plan, it had to be. Somehow it would play a role at Creation Fest next summer. In early January, during a stopover, I went to Billy's office in his mansion. All I knew was that he had to be stopped. I planned to quit and tell the cops about him. Hope they could arrest him on gun charges or raid his tour bus and find DNA or any number of things. But my plans changed once I got inside. Billy always kept the Mini 14 where he could see it. At the time, he was in his S&M torture chamber through a door at the back of his office. So I picked up the gun where he left it on his desk, sat down and waited for him. My thoughts raced for the next 20 minutes. There was still time, just run, a voice of reason said. Run and never look back. But I stayed. If I didn't stop him, no one would. 20 minutes later, Billy came out of the chamber, naked, covered in blood, to a gun pointing straight at him. "Who pissed in your Cheerios, kid?" he asked. "I'm putting a stop to this," I said. I found courage inside that I didn't know existed. My mom and dad's lessons to me as a young boy came screaming back. Do good unto others, choose light over darkness, follow Jesus, and be compassionate. It wasn't too late. It's never too late. Do good, choose light, follow Jesus. All signs pointed to blowing Billy's head off. But despite my newfound courage, my blood still ran cold. "I'm not going to let you do whatever it is you're trying to do," I said. Billy cocked his head. He grabbed a towel that was hanging on the wall and began mopping off the blood. "What is it I'm trying to do?" he asked. "Hell on earth," I said. "I've listened to your plans. Creation Fest 2020. A plague, I can't help but feel it has something to do with coronavirus." He looked at me solemnly. Then his face cracked up, and he began howling with laughter. "Coronavirus? What the fuck am I gonna do? Get a bunch of people together and give them the sniffles? Talk about a slow burn." He wiped the tears out of his eyes with a hand that looked suspiciously like a claw. "You know, not every bad thing that happens in the world has to do with the devil," he said. "Your species is a lot fucking dumber than I thought. You want to see a plague? I can show you a plague." Billy ignored the gun I was pointing at him, sat down at his desk and pulled out the twin packages of coke and heroin he kept in the top drawer. "One man's heaven is another man's hell," he said, grabbing his Bowie knife. "You do well to learn that, kid." Billy got some of each powder under the knife's edge, like he had a few months earlier, and held it out to me. "Care for a nightcap? For old time's sake?" I shook my head and kept the Mini 14 pointed straight at him. My guts had turned to jelly, and a trickle of piss ran down the inside of my leg. "Suit yourself." He snorted deep, and his eyes went wild. "So, tell me about your plan, kid," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You're gonna shoot me, is that it?" "That's what I had in mind." "What about Lily?" he asked. "You got tired of her? I've got a whole gaggle of geese you can choose from. She ain't the only one, you know." "It's not about her." "What about being one of my generals? Riches beyond your wildest dreams. Immortality. A seat at the head of the Dark Lord's table? It ain't too late to change your mind. Hell, I can even let you handle the whip in the war room more often if that's what you're after." "Fuck you, Billy," I said. Courage I didn't know I had cut through the fear. For a fleeting second, Billy looked shocked. I stood my ground against the Lord of Darkness, and said a prayer inside that'd keep my resolve. "My mind's made up," I said. "This isn't going any further." Billy nodded. "Better get on and do it then." Without a second thought, I pulled the trigger. There was a massive explosion from the end of the Mini 14's barrel, much bigger and louder than I expected, and the force I hadn't prepared for knocked me back. But when I looked to see what happened, Billy was still sitting in his chair, smiling. I studied the smoking barrel of the gun. At the end of it, one of those party favor flags had shot out with a word written in a comic font. Bang. Billy stood up, and I felt invisible ropes around me. The Mini 14 dropped out of my hands. He advanced with the Bowie knife. I remembered what happened to Corey and said another silent prayer, hoping it would be quick and painless. Out of the S&M torture chamber behind Billy, a bunch of beautiful creatures walked out, drawn by the sound of the gunshot. Lily was with them. They were naked, their hair sussed. Lily looked more beautiful than ever. Small breasts, big hips, skin so clear it looked like a doll's. Her robin's egg blue nails stood out in the dimness of Billy's office. "Baby," Lily said, rushing over to me. "Your tattoos." I looked down and noticed that 2 holes had burned through my shirt. The thread was incinerating, sizzling away like a wheat field on fire. The pentagram's outline was burning, as was the mark of the beast. The ram's head with a script underneath, which read Billy's goat. "Help me," I screamed. The pain was excruciating. "Please, Lily. He's going to destroy the world. He's evil. Don't you see that? But we can stand for good. You have to help me." "You and your maniacism," said Billy. "Light and dark, good and evil. There ain't no God. And if there was, he sure as hell wouldn't bust his ass helping the likes of you." He walked over to Lily, smacking her naked butt with a hand that had turned definitely into a monster's claw. He bit into Lily's shoulder, drawing blood. Then he looked back at me with reddened fangs that seemed to be growing by the second. "Please don't kill me." "I ain't gonna kill you," said Billy. "I want you to spread the message." "Spread your message? What do you mean?" "Warn them of my coming," said Billy, his harem of concubines and acolytes walking alongside him over to me. "Write about this. Pique the interest of the ones drawn to the darkness. And the others, well, they're not gonna believe a goddamn word you say. You already sound like a fucking crazy person." "But At the moment, invisible stitches ran through my lips, cinching them shut. My hands were bound to my side. I struggled, wanting to reach up, get a finger between my lips so I could pry them open, but I was paralyzed. A needle that wasn't there continued its work, diving in and out of the flesh and making me wish I'd used the Mini 14 on myself. I had a feeling it would have been a bullet if the barrel was turned in the opposite direction. "You can't speak of it," said Billy. "But after I untether your ropes, your fingers will still move. Type to your little heart's content." He stood in front of me toe to toe. In his eyes, I saw something that never scratched the surface of until then. There was a void. A complete and utter void of anything, no compassion, no hatred, nothing. A lack. Consummate darkness. "I looked into the future," Billy said. "Fucking coronavirus. Creation Fest is going to be canceled this year." He reached down and took my phone out of the pocket of my jeans. "But this is your sword, kid," he said. "Wield it mightily. Spread the word about me and see if one God-loving person believes you." In his eyes, I saw the void filled. I witnessed the fury of hell. Slaves toiling amidst sweltering flames. There was a sense of humor at it all. Those who had accepted their generalships, Billy's goats, stood on top of the rubble and laughed at the cosmic joke of human existence. "As I looked into the future," continued Billy, "I came to realize that 2020 will be the year of bizarre shit. But an antichrist Christian music singer who's planning to bring hell on earth? Come on now, kid. It'll be a good story. Gear the few who read it up for the possibility. I like it when they run scared." I looked down to realize that my shirt had sizzled away completely. The fire outlining my tattoos had smoldered, leaving blackened scars behind. Lily came forward and touched them, but there was nothing gentle in her touch now. Lily's robin egg's nails had turned into blackened claws. I saw that she was no longer blonde either, no longer tan-skinned and big-hipped. She had dark gray features, skinny as a pole. Her hair had fallen out, revealing an oozing, sore-covered scalp beneath. "I told you I could be whatever you want me to be, didn't I?" she asked. "Didn't mean you saw who I really was." She was a walking corpse, and she was a living nest for black widows. They began clawing out of her pores and tumbling out of her gaping mouth. "Don't you fret, baby," she mumbled, her word muffled by the bodies of 1,000 widows crawling up from inside her chest. "You're going to sleep now." Lily raised her index finger and dug a claw into my head, right between the eyes. She traced a symbol, the pain worse than any I'd ever felt. As my consciousness began to fade, and I fell to the floor, I looked up to see Billy standing over me, the devil incarnate. "Too bad, kid. You'd have made one hell of a shepherd." I woke up hours later in a field, freezing half to death. A farmer found me. He took me inside and gave me clothes. But when he saw the symbols on my chest and the symbol on my forehead, he told me to get the hell out of his house. On the way out, I looked in the mirror. Lily had carved something between my eyes. It was a blackened upside-down cross, just like the one that had been bolted to the ceiling above the bed on the night of our unholy marriage. Fast forward to a little under a year later. I'm mute now. The invisible stitches are still there in a strange way. My lips move, but when I try to talk, no words come out. I can type, though. My phone is my sword, but I'm nothing more than a pathetic, crazed crusader. One of the outcasts who Jesus would have shown compassion to. But would he have shown me compassion? I'm a shell. I sometimes wonder if I'm human anymore. A year ago, I went on tour with the Antichrist. As far as I know, Billy's still out there making plans, driving a meat wagon tour bus, and taking the leftovers to his charnel house of horrors. Creation Fest 2021 is scheduled to take place next June. And if coronavirus blows over, you better believe Billy's new manager will make sure he's one of the headliners. Billy played it well. I can't talk. I can only gesture around like a crazy person. I have an upside-down cross scarred into my forehead. Lift my shirt and you'll see blackened scars. A pentagram on one side, a ram's head on the other. Who the hell would believe a word I say? Maybe a few. But those are the ones Billy wants to know. The crazy ones like me. Or the ones who seek darkness. Who'd gladly join his army if they knew he was creating one. Billy's got a new manager. He has to now. There's a paltry audience for the time being. But the tour rolls on.